Look, obviously a different type of week. We get accustomed to this, and so today was really, our first day. A lot of base, first, second down, also third down. We'll have meetings this evening. I think the recovery is real important, and how we handle the week. Any questions?
During the pre-draft process, how much did you guys look into Spencer Rattler, and just what are your questions?
We spent a lot of time with him. I'd say there was 5. Pro day, and then we had a private workout. We were all in Phoenix, Scottsdale area where he's from. Steak dinner, the whole 9 yards. Test in the morning, throw. He did really well. It's not surprising to see. There's again, I'm going to use an analogy. There's a calmness when he plays, and he too has been through, the adversity early on, coming out of high school to Oklahoma and then transferring. But there is a confidence when he's on the field, and you see that in preseason and last week. It's not too big for him, and he's got a live arm. We were really impressed, and look, not that it matters, but we had him graded higher, and I'm sure the Saints did as well. And it got to a point where you just had to take the grade, but he was impressive.
Sean, I know I've asked you this about players from other teams. The knowledge that you guys have of playing their roster, Pete being there, and then BJ working with Joe and Emrod, does that help? I guess both?
I think from a personnel perspective, look, you'd say most recently Cody, and so because there are a lot of players there for me that I'm unfamiliar with, but Pete or Cody and so that part, relative to the scouting report, strengths, weaknesses, and then look, Dennis and I have worked together for he was on our original 06 staff, and then became our defensive backs coach, became a defensive coordinator, came here, and then head coach. Then I hired him back, and so I think this, though, I think I said this the other day, I think on a short week there'll be, a wrinkle or two, but I think so much of it is the rest and recovery and preparation mentally, because you can't actually get maybe the full speed work that you'd like, and that's Thursday night football. I mean, that just is what it is, and so yeah.
Along those lines, Coach, what's the biggest challenge of these short weeks, especially Thursday night?
It would just be the recovery, the time from your game to the next game. And so I think we've done it long enough. When I say that, our league has, where teams maybe 10 years ago weren't as, in Dallas, they play one every year, right? Like long before there was Thursday. And look, I can recall, I could tell you the game. We were playing Miami, Sunday our game ended. Coaches, we were back in Sunday night, and we had a short week, and it was just different for all of us, but man, we struggled in the game. So it was like, all right, that's not, in other words, and I think by and large, most of the teams have begun to figure out that schedule, and adjust.
But I've talked to people in New Orleans a few times. I've been back there. There's a little bit of an us against the world, and it seemed like you embraced that when you were the coach. What is it you enjoyed about coaching there in New Orleans?
I think what happened, none of us planned. In other words, I don't know that we anticipated where we were going at the time we were going. We were going post-Katrina. In other words, I was with Dallas, and I'd interviewed in Green Bay, and I was on the New Orleans interview waiting to hear from the late Ted Thompson. And Mickey Loomis I'd met for the first time. I seemed to like him, but have you ever been on one of those interviews where you're kind of looking around thinking, man, this is his problem. It's not going to be mine. And that evening, I went back to the hotel to take a break before dinner, and I got a voice message that I hadn't gotten that job. And I remember throwing my phone into the pillow and just like, holy cow. And where I'm going with it is, Drew came, I remember us recruiting him thinking he's going to Miami. And then obviously you take a player like Reggie Bush who's going to get drafted by the Texans. And so fate would have it, there were a number of us that ended up there. And all right, and so we're starting a rebuild. But I think none of us could ever understand the impact relative to it was bigger than football, and that we weren't prepared for. I don't think any of us were. And then that first year, I don't know, in preseason, I don't know if we won a game. At one point I remember thinking, I don't know if we're going to win a game this year. And then, we won a close one at Cleveland to start the year. We still hadn't played at home. They were still fixing the Superdome. We went on the road and fell down to Green Bay, if my memory's right, 13 points. We came back and won that game. And then and so right off the top, we had some close games and then beat Atlanta. That was the Monday night game. And so I've said this before, it wasn't our best team, but it was one of our tougher teams. And we ended up in the NFC Championship game in that first year. And but it was more than that. It was just the recovery. And we would fly home from regular season games. There'd be, 1,000 people at the airport. Just like none of us could have ever envisioned that. So there was a uniqueness to it. And I think a lot of it, they've always been passionate, but I think a lot of it had to do with the year prior and how difficult it was. And so, and then pretty soon, I remember we had to, look, you have to beat your division, and Gruden was at Tampa, and they'd won a Super Bowl. Foxy, those are two good friends of mine. Look, two closest. I'd worked with John for 4 years at the Giants. We were both coordinators there, went to a Super Bowl, and John Fox, and then Gruden, hired me. I was his assistant in Philly, and these are two good coaches in our division, and so that was the first step, trying to figure out how to. But meanwhile, I think that uniqueness, timing-wise, and then they hadn't had a lot of success, and then anyway, so that was different. And I think, and I'm not like when I say there's over 100 people that share that same experience. That was like, wow, we weren't prepared for that.
After Sunday's game, Bo was like, I'm ready to go practice right away. That competitiveness, how much of that is what you like pre-draft and what you appreciate?
Absolutely. Look, there was a point in the game, I don't know what the number was, we fell down, and I turned to him, I said, hey, this NFL thing now, it's not like college. Each week we were just in a lighthearted moment. I just said, we don't have any. I'm not going to use a college team because I don't want to. But we don't have any such and such university on our schedule. Each week you can catch yourself right away. And so. But yeah, look. And this is, we talked about, this is the first time he's played on a short, a number of these guys haven't played on a Thursday night, but that's the schedule. They've played on unique schedules themselves when it comes to bowl games and whatnot. And it's really a mindset that ultimately you have to prepare for.
Sean, you said with Drew that you had reached out to him previously. The way the schedule's set up, do you get a chance to see him at all, shake his hands?
You guys will. I think they're doing it at halftime, so probably not. I mean, our halftime's 8 minutes, and it takes me a minute to pee. And then sit with the coaches, go through the list, take a highlighter out. What are the features for the second half? Go in, talk to the team, hear the keys in the second half, ready, break. It really is fast. And so, but he's been to camp, and I'm sure there'll be the right moment to reach out to him. He's going into their Hall of Fame, and then they also have a Ring of Honor. And look, I don't know what year it is now, but this will be the beginning of a number. I mean, and so I'm glad. Look, he wanted it to be this game, and that means something. So, but the focus for us, though, in our team, I told him this morning, is look, we're in the business of collecting wins, and this is the next one, we have to get in the preparation and all of it. And so, years later, we'll be able to look back on it. But right now, the focus, and obviously these nights are late just because you're doubling, you're doing two. Last night was base, play action, first and second down run, and then call it 11, you're starting on third down. You're doing two nights. So the key is to not over-install and get the right stuff.
When you're opening the window for a guy coming off IR on a short week, is there a different challenge with that?
Well, the different challenges, and you see how we're dressed. In other words, you want to, you'd like to be in shoulder pads and helmets, and we had a few guys that put shoulder pads and helmets on, so this day counted as a day that we were full because we had a few players that were full. That's how the rule works, and that's fine. But it's a little bit different.
Coach, I know you talked about it yesterday, but is it going to be odd even just being in the visitors' locker room?
I've never been in it, so I know there's been a lot of remodeling done to everything there because they're hosting, when they get the bid, whatever, 5 years ago, that it comes with these qualifiers. But I've never been in it. I guess I have been in it, but it's different now. The old one, you used to have to walk the field. There's always a few stadiums where you're carrying your luggage, down the sidelines. Vegas, Houston, there's a few. That used to be the case, but it's different now. And early on there, all of us had young children. After the game, win, lose, or draw, we would always play flag football with the children, and we'd go across the field, and then periodically players, and it was like you had to stop, like you did when you were little, and say car, and you're waiting on somebody, and you're interrupting the game, and the kids they really look forward to that. We were trying to build something, and but I have no idea where the buses pull up, or it'll be just a new, I know I'm familiar with the stadium, but I've never been in the new locker room where they're at now.
Coach, you mentioned your wife is taking care of all the tickets and everything.
It's done.
How many people are going to be there, though?
If you haven't heard from me, it's not good news.
Too late.
If you haven't heard, I would say, ironically, less than this past weekend, which this past weekend was different. My children, friends, and family that, I think she, in the off season, looked into buying a suite ahead of time, and so it's all handled, which is great because there really is not. I mean, I'm driving back from the stadium on Sunday and debating whether to come in here and start on the film, and then at the last minute, I'm like, No, and then it was like, how can I get to sleep before 9? In other words, how can I bank some hours? And fortunately, I was able to do that. So, but I'd say 20. Yeah.
Sean, how beneficial is it, like, for someone like Kwame McMillan, known for playing the nickel spot, like, if needed, and go play outside?
Yeah, look, he's a good football player, and he's got good instincts. We know where we'd like him, and yet sometimes in our league, you don't always get what you like. And so those traits are valuable, especially like when it happens quickly like that. And, that happened fast where, there's games where once in a while something unusual happens. We had a preseason game once when I was at the Giants. It was a preseason game. I don't know why we were down to 3 tight ends. There was an interception, and on the play, we were in 12 personnel, and both tight ends got injured. And I remember looking at the call sheet, and like 80% of your offense, was gone. And I think we've done a good job now. We have 8 linemen, no longer 7. That's happened occasionally. We know the quarterback issue. They kind of tried to address a little bit. That's happened before. But you just hope, you hope to stay healthy, and you don't want it all to happen at once.
Coach, in your career, when there have been these games that have been built bigger than a regular season game, how have you been able to block out the distractions?
I think on a short week, you're forced to. Like, in other words, like right from here, and so there's really, and I say this, there's zero time. Last week ahead of time, there were a few things that she was able to handle, but on a short week, there just isn't enough time in the day. And I'm sure there'll be some emotions at some point, but more importantly, it's about our team. And, because really, we go to stadiums with players that, man, this means something to me. I used to be a Chief or Charger, Raider or Eagle, and to that individual, having spent time there, that matters. And so, but I think because of the week and because of the schedule, I haven't really had a chance to. I mean, I get it, but what's most important is finding a way to win.